Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Unfound Now. This is a series I started back in the summer of 2020, and it is a monthly series, and maybe you realized that maybe you didn't, that there was no episode for December at the end of December. A lot of reasons put together. I was in Pennsylvania seeing my dad. We had an update episode that I needed to put together for the podcast, and that takes a lot longer than a regular episode if you didn't know. So I just decided to take a month off from Unfound Now, but it is back, and I can assure you that this will go the whole way through the rest of 2023 without missing any months. So, unfortunately, since the last time you saw me for an episode of Unfound Now, there have been quite a few disappearances. I say that sadly. You know how I feel about disappearances. I wish they didn't happen, but they do. So unfortunately, I had a lot of different disappearances to pick from, and the one I will be talking about for this episode is the disappearance of Christopher Miller, who went missing from Janesville, Wisconsin. He's 27 years old, and he disappeared in the very early morning of November 19th of 2022, which coincidentally is my sister's birthday. And I'm going to get into the details when we go to the map, but Christopher was getting chased by the police. He pulled his car to the side of the road. I don't think he had any choice because I think at least one of the tires was out on the car because he had hit some things. And then he took off running, never to be seen again. And I'll be talking about that once again during the map video of this episode. If you've never watched Unfound Now before, I started this for three main reasons. Number one, education. I'm all about education. We are not about fascination here at Unfound or Unfound Now. I'm trying to learn more about disappearances, and I'm trying to pass a lot of my education on to all of you, and looking at recent disappearances is one way to do that. Also, publicity. Any disappearance, no matter how old, how new, even ones maybe that have been solved, it can help if they get publicity. We can learn a lot from that, and of course, if it's unsolved, we always have the chance of somebody seeing the story, hearing a story about a disappearance, and deciding, oh, you know what? I want to get involved, or that person might think, oh, you know what? I think I do know something about that disappearance. You never know. So number one is education. Number two is publicity. And then number three is insight. I think that it's helpful to all of you when you get to hear what I'm thinking when I read a disappearance news story for the first time, because I get them just like all of you do. I go to Google, I do a search for missing persons. I go to the news section. I'm, of course, a member of many groups on Facebook, for example, people putting up new disappearances. And so what is going through my head? And I thought that you might find that interesting, maybe to help you as you analyze that disappearance or any other disappearance yourself. Moving on, the three main points for this disappearance, and I bring three new ones every time, is number one, and I'll be getting into these in much more depth after the map portion. Number one, common and often. Number two, in their shoes. And number three, answers for searching. Those will be the three topics after the map part. We'll now be going to the map analysis, so I'm going to put up, you'll see on the screen, where the car chase ended and the foot chase began. And I'm doing this video on January 30th of 2023, so it's been over 2 months since Christopher went missing, and he is still missing, and so that's why this episode is being done. So I will be back after the map portion, and we will get into those three educational points for this video much more in depth. Okay, we can now look at this map for this disappearance of Christopher Miller. I'm going to read an article, and then I'm going to use my pen to point out the exact location of where this happened, where this chase ended or started, depending on how you want to look at it. And then I'm going to show you some of the surrounding area. Of course, already in that picture there that you see on the screen, you can see the surrounding area. What you need to know for right now is that the car chase ended right about here on I-90. There's a video from a dash cam from one of the police cars that shows them yelling at Christopher to get out of his car. He eventually does, but then he runs, and I'll get into that a bit. But you can look at that map while I read this article. Of course, there have been several articles written about Christopher's disappearance since it occurred back in November. New body and dash cam video obtained by 27 News show the last moments a missing Madison man was seen alive. In the video, you can see 27-year-old Christopher Miller run off after being pulled over along I-39/I-90 in Janesville. That's Janesville over here. Around 2 a.m. November 19th, so in the very early hours of November 19th. Wisconsin State Patrol troopers were trying to stop him for speeding after he allegedly hit a traffic light. And I believe the traffic light was hit somewhere over here in Janesville, and I'll tell you what I think was going on there. Miller's loved ones say the footage is long awaited, but leaves them with more questions than answers. His mom, Tammy James, said the biggest of those is after he took off, what happened. We kept saying we need that footage because the footage was the key of where Chris was last seen, James said. After Miller ran off, the video shows backup arrive. An officer searched the area around Miller's car with flashlights. James believes they should have gone farther and looked harder because her son wasn't wearing a jacket, didn't have a phone, and was unfamiliar with the area. Because he fled, they disregarded his life, James said. Chris Miller, Miller's father, also believes the search effort for his son wasn't as extensive as it could have been. I'm just wondering why they didn't go, door to door in that area asking people, Miller said. If someone saw him out there, they could have done anything. They went to play judge, jury, and executioner at that point, Miller added. As you can tell in this article, the family is not happy with what went down that early morning. The Rock County Sheriff's Office is now leading the search for Miller with the help of the State Patrol. 27 News reached out to get an update on Rock County's effort, but have not yet heard back. Loved ones have also conducted several searches of their own. Miller's fiancée, Mallory Durst, said they would not stop until Christopher is found. We're going to keep fighting day after day and coordinating our own searches and doing whatever we can to find him, Durst said. A GoFundMe has been set up to help fund their search efforts. Loved ones also made a Facebook page, Find Christopher Miller, and a TikTok called Find Chris Miller to spread the word about his disappearance. Now, James said they are also offering a $2,000 reward for any information about her son's whereabouts. A missing persons report for Miller has been filed in Madison, not in Janesville, but in Madison. We are hoping that by getting this image out there, someone may have information about his whereabouts and call us, a spokesperson for the Madison Police Department said. Anyone with information about Miller's whereabouts should call police. Like I said, there is a video out there. It's not my video, so I cannot play it on this channel. It'll get blocked. So you'll have to find it yourselves. But what you will see in that video is the car coming down this highway, or maybe on the on-ramp. And let me zoom this in, maybe just for all of you now that we're going to take a little closer look at the map. It's unclear to me if he was coming down the highway. Either way, his car ended up like right on there on the side of the road. You could tell that it was damaged. It was still drivable for a while, but you could tell the police car was behind him with the video. The police car was behind the other car, and you could see smoke coming out from it. It looked like at least one of the tires was blown on Christopher's car. Now, whether he was coming from the west and then merged on here to go south, and the car just wouldn't go any farther because of the tires, or he was coming straight down here and then just finally pulled over to the side of the road, I'm not sure. It does show, once again, the last maybe 100 yards of this car chase. And just about as soon as the cars stop, officer jumps out, yelling commands to Christopher, and after a couple seconds, Christopher jumps out. Now, what I think happened, zooming out again, is somewhere up in here, he hit a pole that had a traffic light on it. I don't know if somebody called it in or a police officer just happened to be there. I don't know. But this chase started, and somehow eventually it got on to I-90. But my understanding is this light that got hit was in Janesville, within the city limits of Janesville, Wisconsin. So the car ends up right about here. And what you also see in the video, it's very short at the end, but you see Christopher jump out and then go like this direction. A real direction. Now, if we really see how much it's going to allow me to zoom in here. Okay. So the car was right about where this lane merges onto the regular highway, right in here. The car was right here on the side of the road, and then Chris jumps out. You see him because of the headlights of the police car, and then he's on the driver's side, and then he kind of cuts in front of his own car. And on that video, that's the last that you see of him. He jumps out and just is going full steam ahead, as you would imagine. But the reason I point that out is he did not try to cross traffic. There were vehicles out there. You can see 18-wheelers going by in this video, even so it's like 2 in the morning. In the video, it does not show Chris trying to jump over the fence. It's not even like he tries to fake going over the median over to northbound traffic. Nothing like that. As soon as he is out, he's going this like down in that direction. And of course, as you would imagine out there, it's pretty dark. Without the headlights of the police car or any other cars, you're not going to be seeing much out there. And probably that was a concern when they thought about chasing after Christopher Miller, running off into the dark after somebody who's fleeing police. Who knows what can happen? They don't know anything about him. In fact, I didn't try to see if Christopher Miller has a record or anything else. They're going to go running off into the dark after somebody is running. What if that person has a gun? The person getting chased in the dark would certainly have the advantage. So you can see kind of how much work do you really want them to put into this right at that second. Especially you can see running off into this field. Even if you were to point the police car headlights into the field, you're probably not going to be able to see that far, not be able to see much anyway. So, but that's where it happened. Now, what of course you see, speaking of fields, is there aren't any forests or woods or anything out there near where the car chase ended right here. Flat ground, Wisconsin, fairly flat state. Not a lot of mountains there. Certainly woods there, but not in this area. You can see it seems the way this looks, it all looks like farming land, a lot of rectangles and squares. And so it's pretty flat. And then so you would think that there wouldn't be a lot of places to hide. You wouldn't think. But who knows? There's irrigation out here. There's a lot of piping, a lot of getting water to like run under, maybe dirt roads and things that are between all of these little fields. Those are all places that somebody could hide. I didn't say it would be smart, especially considering, I did look at the weather that night, and it was cold. I did write it down here. It was 19 degrees with a wind chill, and the wind was like almost 20 miles an hour. So, and he was without a jacket. You heard that in the article. Ideas of hypothermia come to mind. It didn't look to me like the car was damaged enough to think that Christopher had any injuries, like a head injury, like we so often talk about with situations like this. So I'm not inclined to believe that happened unless when he was running, remember, he's going to be running through the dark. He doesn't have a flashlight with him. The police do, but that's one of the reasons that the police don't chase after. They're going to use a flashlight. Well, flashlight shows where they are, and of course, if somebody has a gun, they're easy targets. So Christopher's going to be running out in these fields, no light. It's going to be very, very difficult. In addition, off here to the west, there is a train yard right here, and coincidentally, I was just reading an article within the last couple of days. It didn't happen here in the United States, I don't think, but some kids were playing hide and go seek, and a kid went and hid in a boxcar of a train, and the train left with him in it. So, is this a possibility? Did he go down this way and then maybe get to this road and run back this way? Because we have to remember, he's trying to get away. They want to catch him. He needs to get away. He needs to hide. And as I've begun to think, I think what happens is these people go and hide in places, and maybe they do have an injury or it's cold or something, and that could be where they die. And because they're not found is because why? They're in a hiding place. And since this has all happened, there's been vigils, there's been protests. As you can tell by the tone of the family, they aren't happy with everything that went down. But I don't see what else much more the police could have done out here. You know, way past the outskirts of town. There's no lights. I just don't know what we're really supposed to expect. Now, also we might think about no lakes. There is a river, but it's way over here. So I don't think that probably comes into play. So maybe in a little bit of a way, it's kind of like Jason Landry, although Jason Landry wasn't trying to run away from the police. It's one of those things where it looks like a very easy area to search, but Jason wasn't found, and Christopher has not been found yet. So that is the analysis. Who knows how far Chris could have run? And, I mean, his family, I would think that his family really knew where he was but didn't really want to say anything because he was breaking the law. I don't think that they would be doing everything that they're doing here. I think that they genuinely did not believe know where Christopher is, although he may be out there and somebody else is hiding him because he's going to get in trouble for all of this. As you would expect, the longer it goes without him being found, the less likely it is that somebody has been hiding him. So I'll now get back to, you'll see me back on camera, and I will get to the 3 important educational points for this Unfound Now episode. And we are back. Before I get into those 3 educational points, I want to remind you to like this video. Please share this video with anybody you think would find it interesting, informative. Maybe you know some people who live in the Janesville area of Wisconsin who might be able to help out. So share it, like it. If you are not yet a subscriber to this YouTube channel, please consider doing so. We're already doing very well in subscribers for 2023. I was just talking about that to 2 of my assistants a few days ago. Subscriptions have definitely popped up like in the last 30 to 45 days, which I think is very interesting. Wonder why that is. Also, maybe join this channel. You can monetarily contribute to Unfound by joining this channel for the low price of $3 a month. You get some extra stuff from doing that. But maybe you're more of a Patreon person. You can go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast and support what we do here at Unfound over there. All right, so getting to those 3 points, 3 educational points. If you're wondering why I'm looking off to my left, your right, that is where my notes are. I do not do this off the top of my head. The 3 educational points are common and often, in their shoes, and finally, answers for searches. So instead of searching for answers, answers for searches. I kind of moved those 2 words around. All right. Common and often. I think the first thing all of you need to understand about this type of disappearance, anything regarding wrecks or people who are drinking and driving or police chases, they are all way more common than you will ever know. Now, as far as we know, as far as we can tell, most of these people who get into car wrecks, of course, stay with their cars. And then you have those people who know that they're doing something wrong, that they're drinking or they're high or something, and they know they're going to get in trouble. The police aren't there yet, but they walk off anyway. And some of them are found. Most of them are found, and a few here and there aren't. And then you have a situation like what we're talking about here where a person is actually getting chased by the police. The police are right behind the car. The car stops. The driver runs off, never to be seen again. And in fact, we have covered one exactly like that on Unfound, Brennan Smokey, from some years ago. And he was with two of his buddies, and he wasn't even driving, but they pulled over to the side of the road. I don't think their car was wrecked, though. I think they just decided we're going to ditch the car and run for it. And Brennan was the only one who didn't get caught. However, he is also still missing. And it was daylight. It wasn't cold out. And in fact, there was even a video showing him, just like with Christopher Miller, a video showing Brennan Smokey running off into the woods. But his disappearance is still unsolved. We also have some others. In fact, there was an Unfound Now with Steven Salazar that is now solved, where he got into a wreck. Surely the police were on the way, and he decided to go over to the nearest bridge and jump into the Susquehanna River in Harrisburg. And unfortunately, months later, his remains were found. He was deceased. Why he did all of that, still unclear to me, but that is a disappearance I covered as an Unfound Now, going back to when it happened. We most recently covered the disappearance of Matthew Braswell on the podcast, where he and a buddy were stealing from mailboxes. Somebody caught them, probably calling the police. They tried to get away. The driver, whose name was Antonio, lost control of the SUV, ran into a tree or rolled it over or something. Antonio was too injured to get away. Matthew did get away. He is still missing. And he was a felon. Shouldn't have been doing that, but he was a felon on top of that. And this is a fairly new disappearance from December of 2021. So a year and a little over a month ago. That one is still unsolved. So my point here is, when we start looking at a disappearance like Christopher Miller's, I don't want you to ever think, well, this is really, really rare. And there must be, as I think maybe the family is thinking, is there something going on here? Why didn't the police chase this guy? Or maybe did they, and they caught him and something happened? Maybe like something like what we've seen in Memphis recently with those 5 cops beating that guy to death. Just horrible. Maybe the family, Christopher Miller's family, is thinking something like that happened, and the police have covered it up. There are no facts to rule that out. But what I would say from my experience of 6.5 years of disappearances, as I stated in the map video, it's very dark out there. I don't even know how they would be able to track Christopher down. Even if they did chase him, he had a really good head start on them. Yes, they have flashlights, but those flashlights don't shine like 200, 300 yards ahead. And all it would take is Christopher to turn right, they turn left, and that's all it was taken. They would never find him. I don't care how many lights you have out there at night. It wouldn't matter. And they brought out, I think they've brought out all sorts of equipment and everything. And also, for all of you, don't be fazed by that too much. I think when people think, well, they brought out the helicopters and the dogs and nothing was found, well, surely something else happened besides him running off. There must be foul play or something. I would not say that at all. That is not what I default to. The dogs and the helicopters, I'm glad they did it. But when you really start following disappearances, you find out very often, rarely do those things, those tools we might call them, do they work? Very rarely. So don't be fazed by that. But this is a very common type of disappearance. It's dark. None of these people out there surely know that area like the back of their hand. And Christopher is really running blind in the dark, as it stated in that article, that he didn't even have a phone to use as a flashlight and might not want to use it anyway, considering that would give away his location to the police, for the police to find him. A lot of different possibilities. So very common, and this happens often. And this goes back even way back to the 1980s with cops. How many videos did you watch of police trying to run people trying to get away down? But the big difference there, I think, most of the time, that's in a city. This was not. This was off a highway. There's no lights. Very dangerous for everybody involved. And I can certainly understand why police decided, you know what? We're just going to let this guy go. He may have a gun. Here we are with our flashlights out in this field. It's like there's targets on them when they have these flashlights like that. So they're not going to do that. So number 2, the topic is in their shoes. And what I mean by that is, this certainly seems like a puzzling disappearance. As I went over on the map, no river really nearby, what I would call nearby. There's no large body of water like a lake where he could have just stumbled into it and drowned. There's nothing like that out there. It's all flat land, no woods. How is it that somebody can disappear like that? Now, very well may be he did make it back to civilization and somebody's been hiding him for over 2 months. I doubt that. And as I stated in the map section, the way his family is reacting, they surely don't believe that. I don't think they would be out there doing everything that they're doing if they knew that Christopher was okay. I don't think these people are that demented, that evil to do something like that just to get attention for themselves or whatever. They surely believe he is still missing, so I'm inclined to believe them. But we have to start thinking in the mind of the person who decides to run. The reason Christopher ran is because he knew if he just allowed the police officer to go up there and take him out of the car and put him in handcuffs, that he was going to jail. Maybe he was drinking and driving. Maybe he was driving without a license. I don't know what charges he racked up before we see that video. But it sounds like he ran into a pole. So he knows he's going to jail, and that's the reason he's running. That's the reason. But it's not just about the running. He also knows, well, they're probably going to, be in this area for a while. They're going to be riding around trying to, excuse me, I have a little allergy thing going on here. But they're going to be riding around, so it's not in his best interest to keep running. When you start thinking about this, the quicker a person can find a good place to hide, the more likely he is going to get away. That doesn't mean he's not eventually going to go to jail, because if he survives all of this, he's going to come back to his life sooner or later, and there's going to be a warrant out for his arrest. Really, he's only putting off, the inevitable. But when we start thinking about this, these types of people are really, really, really looking for places to hide. They may be thinking about a place to run, but it may be too far away. And if he's from Madison, Wisconsin, he's not running the whole way back to Madison. So he's looking for a little gully, maybe a kind of sewer that runs under a road. And these would be the reasons that a helicopter is not going to see him, a heat sinker is not going to see him. Dogs are totally overrated. They're not as reliable. Wow. as you might think. And we also have to keep this in mind. And to bring in some more examples, we've had people who have gone missing in situations like this who really weren't even doing anything wrong. Jason Landry, he might have had marijuana in the car or something, but he got in a wreck. Nobody was chasing him. He wrecked in Texas on the wrong road. They went to find him, can't find him, and he's still missing. So even when the person isn't trying to get away from anybody, the person can still go missing. Same way with Shane Fell. What might be a big difference with his, he might have been drinking and driving, but he wrecked his car as well, flipped it over, but he was right by the Mississippi River. He called for his brother to come pick him up, and his brother got there 20 minutes later. Shane was not there. That's a disappearance that goes back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that, and he is still missing. Popular belief is that for some reason he went into the Mississippi River, which was right on the other side of this levee. Why he did that? Who knows? And then we also have what is considered to be a fairly well-known disappearances of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes. They were also involved in a car chase with police, but they weren't even driving. The guy who was driving ditched the car with them in it, made it back to his house, and he didn't go missing. Colt and Molly did. In fact, they were calling people several hours after the ditching of the car happened, but they are still missing for some reason. And I don't think even if they would have been found out there that they would have gotten in any trouble. They weren't the ones driving when this chase happened. So these kinds of things, even when people aren't really doing anything wrong, people can still go missing after wrecks. And it doesn't have anything to do with your ethnicity or anything else. For some reason, a lot of people disappear after car wrecks. But for Christopher's, the big two unknowns is that injuries, could it be that he did have a head injury and that's what got him and he found some place to hide and he died there, or hypothermia, which I talked about the weather, very dangerous situation out there. But we just have to put yourself in these people's shoes. What would you do if you ran? And I think you think about it, you'll start thinking, yeah, probably the best thing for me to do if I really want to get away is not just to be running down the side of the road. That's probably going to get me caught. You go find some place to hide, wait this out. Maybe the police will get bored. Maybe there'll be an even more important call. Maybe there'll be a shooting or something. They'll have to take off, and then you can get out of your hiding place and try to make it back to your home and then try to come up with an alibi or something. Probably not going to be successful, but at least you're not going to get caught probably that night. And then finally, answers for searches. So the issue is, well, if we can get into these people who flee minds, the people who flee and get into their minds, then why is it that so many of these searches are unsuccessful? When we look at Christopher, where he went missing, not necessarily, it doesn't seem to be a tough place to search. Well, then how is it that he is still missing? Well, this is common. We have searches that have happened all over the United States for people after car wrecks and people fleeing police in areas that are seemingly easy to search, and these people are never seen again. One of the big things that gets in the way of all searches is private property. The police just cannot go stomping through people's property without permission. Now, a lot of people, of course, do give permission. A lot of people don't. And so when you start thinking back to that map that I showed you, and those big parcels of land that are in rectangles and squares, that's some acreage there. That's some acreage. And we have to start wondering then about the legal ramifications. What happens if police trespass onto somebody's property and do find Christopher Miller and take him into custody? Is that legal? I wonder. Maybe some defense attorney might get really creative with that. So that's also in their mind. But private property seems to be one of the big barriers to finding people. This happened with the disappearance of Crystal Morrison, a disappearance we covered where she wasn't found for years, and it was because that particular landowner at the time did not allow people to go onto his land. Then the local government was going to be widening a road. They had eminent domain to have a couple surveyors go onto the land, and there she was, deceased. A disappearance that's very well known that Unfound did not cover Brandon Lawson from Texas. Everybody thought he got abducted. Instead, just within, the last couple years, it was discovered that he had taken off, and his remains were found on private property, not too far away from his truck. And the reason was that at the time when he went missing, that particular person did not allow any searches to go on the land. New ownership of the land, they said, yes, come on, go ahead and look. That's when Brandon got found. There are also mistakes. A lot of searchers make mistakes. We have to remember a lot of people out there are not skilled searchers. Some of them are just out there to BS, just for the camaraderie, just because they're maybe hoping to get lucky, finding something. They just want to be involved. They're just snooping around for their own interests and things. They're there for all the wrong reasons, I guess is what I'm saying. That happens a lot. But mistakes are made. Eric Pratt from Colorado, he went missing. They did one search, didn't find anything. They did a second search a couple years later in the exact same places. They did find him, and very sadly, it was suicide. Robbie Hurt, that's a disappearance that we covered. Eric Pratt's we did not cover. But Robbie Hurt's, his truck was found, and they did searches around his truck. Didn't find anything, and then just kind of like Crystal Morrison's, some road workers came along, were clearing up brush along the side of the road. They did find him. So a lot of mistakes can be made, and this just isn't anywhere. This is all over the United States. So it must be a human thing, not some conspiracy or anything else. It's just too many variables, is I think one of the reasons that oftentimes searches aren't successful. On top of the fact, I think people maybe underestimate how badly these people maybe want to get away. And they may figure out how to stuff themselves into very small spaces, and then these people may die there. Like I said, in a sewer or in a barn somewhere, something like that. Especially if they're overcome by their injuries or hypothermia, something like that. But the main point is, so many different groups in different areas come back without finding anything. We must believe it's the process and the people and not some conspiracy. That's the main point for this section. So what are my insights just in general regarding Christopher Miller's disappearance? First of all, we have to understand how motivated these people are not to get caught. We have to really, really, really appreciate that. I've never been in that kind of trouble with the law. Maybe some of you have. And maybe some of you know or are very good friends with people who have fled the police. Maybe you've talked to them about that. All of them really, really, really want to get away. And so the human mind can get very creative when that happens, very desperate. And so mistakes can be made, and maybe they make choices that they normally wouldn't make. We also have to keep in mind for Christopher Miller that he did at some point suffer a car wreck. Did he hit his head? Was he wearing a seatbelt? If he wasn't, did he hit his head on the side window, on the steering wheel? That could eventually hurt him, cause him to make bad decisions. Of course, if there's bleeding on the brain, but other kind of injuries. He was running pretty fast, so it didn't look like he had any problems with his legs, but he may have had maybe an internal injury or something that might not have affected him for a while. A lot of we must consider the weather, and we got to start thinking about sewer pipes and manhole covers and private property. I will tell you, I'm inclined to believe that Christopher Miller is very sadly not still with us. I think that he, running out there in the dark, who knows what can happen. And it's winter, so maybe a lot of those fields are not going to even be touched by a tractor or any sort of equipment until the spring. And maybe that'll be the time when they come across Christopher. That is my best guess at this point. I don't see any foul play here. I don't see any, misconduct by police or anything. I completely understand why they didn't run into that field after him. They don't know who he is. They don't know. They might be getting set up for an ambush. They're not going to do that. If it was a city street with a lot of street lights and things, that's different. But they're not going to do that out in an area like that. It's too dangerous. So that is my assessment for the disappearance of Christopher Miller. I do believe eventually that he will be found not too far away from where the car chase ended up. That's what the stats say. That's what history says. But I would be surprised if it's any farther than a mile away when we start looking at everything put together. Being at night, no flashlight, the weather, no coat, not knowing the area, a person's only going to be able to go so far. Very sad, but I'm here to analyze this and give you the best information I can give. So that's the disappearance of Christopher Miller. Please like this video. Please share it. And you will see me a month from now for the next Unfound Now. See ya.